we're live. Welcome to yet another edition of our PCS Q&A. I am your host, MJ Boyce. I am the Director of Community Outreach at PCS Grades. Boom! See, left, right, center, whatever. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be diving deep, really deep into what to expect this peak PCS season. We've got the people here that know those answers. And of course, with us, as always, is the lovely Megan Harless, our resident PCS reform advocate. And oh, by the way, resident BA censored for little ears in your room because we love you. All right. So before we get on to Megan and our lovely guests here, we're going to go ahead and hit up those housekeeping items as we do every week. Ready, set, here we go. All right, folks, we have the answers. If we don't have the answers, guess what? We know who does. And if we don't have either of those things, if we don't know either of those things, we're going to take your questions for action and get back to you with an answer. Speaking of which, any questions, comments, concerns that you might have, go ahead and drop those in the comments section below because you'll be entered to win some Hope Design Limited bling from our girl, Lauren Hope. Yes, you guys have seen the bling that she makes, and we are going to be giving away 2 of her necklaces today. So comments, questions, concerns, all welcome. LOL smiley faces are always encouraged, but unfortunately do not count as an entry to win. Okay. Next up, we bring the sources to you. We bring in these experts like our moving industry professionals here, like Transportation Command, U.S. Transportation Command, like those education experts and employment advocates and military movers. We bring them to you so that you can ask those questions from the source live and in living color. However, sometimes you're going to experience something specific to you and your military family. And when you encounter those challenges that are specific to you and your military family, there are 2 forever and always resources. Number 1, your local chain of command. Number 2, your local transportation office. Those are the people who know you. Those are the people who are dealing with your stuff. Those are the people who can take your issues and further them for action. Speaking of resources, I said it last week and I'll go ahead and say it again. PCS Grades. Boom! We are also a resource. We are also a resource for your disposal, whether you want to read or leave reviews on your on or off base housing, your movers, your lenders, the schools in the area. Leave those reviews not only to have your voice heard, but also to give that military family a heads up who's coming to your area soon. You can also read our area guides. We have blogs written by military spouses, just like us. So, BAH calculators, we have so much. So head on over to pcsgrades.com, leave a review, read a review. It is for us. It is by us, the military and veteran community. Okay, last, but certainly not least, we have to continue to do our part, people. We've got to flatten the curve. We have got to flatten that curve. Wear your mask, social distance, whatever it takes. Because when we flatten that curve, we're going to flatten Murphy with it. You hear us, Murphy? We are coming for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Megan for those DOD updates. Megan, I'm going to make you big because Stacy seemed to have lost connection. So please bear with me in these technical difficulties. And oh, by the way, Murphy, back off. 2 seconds. Wait. I got it. Okay, go, Megan.
Hey, everybody. So just a couple of reminders for you today. We've had a lot of questions in our groups about what your responsibilities are, what you should be taking apart, not taking apart. So just a few reminders. Your washers, they do need to be drained. And this goes for like any deep freezers you may have or any additional refrigerators that you have that you're moving. They need to be thawed out. They need to be drained. The water needs to be out of them. If you have a front load washer, you're going to need to get the shipping bolts to go inside of it to keep the drum in place so it doesn't get damaged during transit. Additionally, outdoor equipment such as like your playgrounds, your trampoline sets, those are your responsibility to disassemble into pieces that can fit onto the moving truck. Your movers, your crew, they will disassemble furniture inside of your home, your beds, your tables, anything such as that, but your outdoor big play equipment furniture is your responsibility to disassemble. So just a few reminders today. That's all I got for now. I'll send it back to you, MJ.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. And here we are. Let me just go ahead and fix this right quick. See, this is why we love Stacy, our community outreach manager over here at PCS Grades. We love her because she does all of this for us so that I don't have to, so that I can concentrate on you guys and not look like an idiot. Unfortunately, today, this is not going to be the case. I'm going to look like that. So
it's a Wednesday that feels a lot like a Monday. So things are going to happen. It's okay.
Yes, it's definitely leaking. Okay, so let's hit the ground running. I want to introduce all of you to some awesome gentlemen who have actually been with us before on a previous webinar that blew up because these guys know how to provide the updates from the actual people who are moving your stuff, right? So I would first like to introduce Chuck. And Chuck is from the International Association of Movers. They both are, Chuck and Dan are. So Chuck, tell us about a little bit about yourself and remind our audience how cool you are in terms of military affiliation as well.
Okay, well, I am an Army brat, so that's first and foremost. Dad was 20 years in the military, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, and so I get it. I completely understand what the whole moving experience is in the DoD arena. And for some reason in my lifetime, I decided to become a mover and did that for 11 years, handling a ton of DoD family relocations. And then I came to be a part of this association. We represent over 2,000 companies around the world that are involved in the moving industry. And it's been an incredibly rewarding situation for me. I've been with the association now for 17 years. And the last 2 years of that, I've been the president of the organization.
Wonderful. So very much so welcome. And didn't you say at one point you said you were a brat?
I am an Army brat, no doubt about it. My wife will tell you I'm a brat just in general, but I'm an Army brat, and so completely get everything that these families are experiencing.
And that's awesome, especially since it happens to be month of the military child, right? And so there you go. And I'm just going to say, like my husband says, growing older is mandatory. Growing up, totally optional.
Oh, yeah. I've never grown up. Never. And will not.
Well, that's the way. See, we're on the same page. All right. And I would also like to introduce Dan, who is also from the International Association of Movers. Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself, your military affiliation, and how cool you are as well.
I don't know about the cool part. I'm the grown-up, though, probably in this organization. That's what I would say. Yeah, I've been with IAM actually in 2 months. It'll be 3 years. But before that, I did 20 years in the Air Force as a logistics officer. I spent my last 3 years as the director of personal property for the Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, who ran personal property for the Department of Defense prior to Transcom taking it over a couple of years ago. And then for 8 years after that, I was a Department of the Army civilian. So have moved under the process, was a part of the process of bringing on Defense Personal Property Program I started in 2007 into that process, and now work with IAM as a government and military relations guy. So
awesome.
We brought Dan to the dark side. There you go.
To the dark side. See, whenever I hear the dark side referred to, I usually look at that as an iPhone. So I'm an Android user. I'm not going to the dark side. Write it down.
Come and join us. It's great with the iPhone.
Amen.
Get out. Okay, we're going to dive. Oh, get out. I'm outnumbered. Get out of here, all of you. I'm going to dive right into these questions because, there's just a lot going on, a lot of change, a lot of transition. So let's just start with something that's kind of new with IAM because we love our acronyms, International Association of Movers, right? IAM. So recently, in conjunction with, our dear friend Megan here, the lovely Megan Harless, who's got her hands all up in the PCS space, a panel was formed in conjunction with the moving industry. So can you tell us a little bit about this panel and what its purpose is?
Yeah, I'll jump on that if you like. Megan actually approached me with the idea probably back in the, I don't know, I'll be embarrassed to say, maybe it was the fall or even the late summer, about having a military spouse type forum along with industry to discuss PCS, anything going on with the PCS. So, and actually Megan named it. It's the Military Relocation Advisory Panel, the MRAP, which is a familiar acronym for the DoD. But we put that together so that we could gain an understanding and appreciation of military families and what they're going through, and have movers kind of hearing those stories, but at the same time taking military spouse advocates from the services and understanding what's happening in the moving world, why things might happen the way they happen, just trying to create appreciation, dispel any myths that might be out there on both sides, and hopefully foster some confidence in the process overall between, again, from that military spouse perspective and the moving industry perspective. Understand some limitations, find ways to educate both of those crowds on each other's perspective. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. And if we find something along the way that we both kind of share, that's maybe a sticking point or a problem that we think we have a solution to or resolution to, then we could raise that up as well through various channels up into the DoD side. So that's my view of it. Megan, I don't know if that kind of scratches the itch for what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You summed it up great, Dan. The idea came about, thinking that we have all these different panels and all these different stakeholders. We have spouses that talk with Transcom. We have moving industry that talks with Transcom, but there was never really any conversations happening between those receiving the service and those providing the service. And it was, why can't we have those conversations too? Because there is a lot of, I think, miseducation or misunderstanding from both sides of the process. And so this panel is, to hopefully, as Dan said, educate each other on what that experience is, why our stuff can't sit on the moving truck for 3 extra days until we arrive in location, and why we can't just shift our moving days another 2 weeks kind of deal. So the whole purpose of it is, it's another way to have stakeholders at the table discussing those issues, discussing those concerns, and educating each other on the process, and seeing what we can do together to help improve the process and the experience for all of those that are involved.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that I have found, we've only had the one meeting thus far, we've got another one coming up, is to learn a common language. In the DoD, we've got so many acronyms, and Dan and I talk that talk, and all of a sudden we get in a room with a group of movers or some other group, and we start throwing those acronyms out, and they're like, wait a minute, what the heck does that mean? Well, we've got our own dialogue, our own vocabulary in the moving industry, and we throw it around like everybody understands it. So really, it's to come to that common place, that common understanding, so that we can then open the dialogue and utilize tools like this to be able to then send that information back out to military families and back out to the mover community, so that we understand each other better. I think that's the goal.
That makes sense. And we actually do have a question here from Anne Marie. Shout out, Anne Marie. Neat board. How does one get involved with it?
So
Go ahead,
right
Meg.
now we have several spouses that are involved on it from all the different service branches to kind of have a well-rounded panel. As we move on, if we look to expanding the panel to add additional spouses or additional industry members, we'll probably put the call out then to invite others on, type of deal. But right now we're trying to keep it small as we get started and get this thing off the ground and start working through some of the beginning details of the process as we navigate through that.
I'm excited that's the first question, because we're getting exactly the same thing on the industry side. Can I get involved? How do I get involved? Again, we're in our infancy. It's a small group, but it sounds like people are excited to learn and be able to share this kind of information. So I'm sure we'll have guests coming in and out of the meetings, so that we can get more and more sharing going on.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that you have a shout out here. I personally thought it was humorous, and we love humor up in here. From Oded, I believe.
Ah,
With DNV van lines checking in. Very excited about this presentation. These Dan and Charles people look suspicious.
well, I'd say the same thing about Oded. Oded is one of your military movers. He's got a number of locations. He's in Boston, he's in the DC area, and he's in Florida. So he does a lot of work on the military side up and down the East Coast, but he's also one of the members of my board of directors. So I have to give him a very positive shout out because he's involved with making sure I still have a job. So good job.
But if you didn't want to take another comment from him, that'd be okay, probably too.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't say, you said it. I didn't say it. You can't.
Your job's in jeopardy.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. All right. So looking back over this past year, starting last year, we had the stop move orders. A lot has happened. A lot has kind of changed. So looking back, what are some of the lessons that y'all have learned with the moving process and how things have changed within the last year due to all of this?
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I get to go.
Yeah, I'll shut my mouth for a second.
Yeah, I think that's a question really that could go in a lot of different directions. So I think the one that I'll kind of start off with is that I think we learned, because we did draw down the amount of moves for a little while, that we've heard reports from the DoD side, Transcom, that the satisfaction levels were at 96 or better for the surveys that they got for satisfied or better, 96% satisfied or better. And again, we talked about this, I think, on the last show. One of the things that we've always kind of thrown to the DoD is if you can smooth the demand out a little bit more, then people can focus and concentrate on each individual shipment a little bit more. So when you stress the capacity of the moving industry, then you stress the customer as well, because everybody's running around like crazy, trying to shove 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So, I think one of the things, because of COVID and because of the way things kind of, back shipments off for a little while, and then in Transcom, then in the services were careful not to just jump right back in once the lights turned green and we started moving again. They tried to meter the shipments out a little bit and maintain a little bit of a top end where they didn't want to go above, to help movers kind of get their feet under them and get back into it. And, I think that's one of the things that we learned, that does work. It does help to smooth the demand out a little bit and maybe not shove so many shipments into a 1 month, 1 month and a half, 2 month time period.
And I'd say the other thing that we really learned a lot about was the use of technology in the move process. We've really, had to do the social distancing. We had to do, the ideas of ensuring that we're not spreading the pandemic. So one of the ways was, though they had just recently been allowed and the adoption was slow in the uptake, virtual surveys really came into being during the pandemic. Virtual meaning there are a number of tools out there that are utilized, but the concept is that you don't have a person come to your house in advance of the move to actually physically look and see what the requirements are for the move. They use tools like, that thing you love so much, the iPhone, or they utilize other tools. It can be an iPad or any type of mobile device where you can go around the room, typically with someone who's working with you to help guide you through the process, and you can show your house to the mover in your own time frame. You can do it late at night. You can do it before you go to work. You don't have to take time off of work. So this has really been a positive, we think, in advancing the use of technology and making it more reasonable and streamlined for the military customers to be able to complete a pre-move survey. So we found this to be a positive, and I'll tell you, now it seems like more and more out of my cold, dead hands will you take this tool away from me, because it's proved to be as efficient, we believe, The estimates are excellent. And then you have a video recording of for both parties, the mover and the transferee, on their goods, the conditions, the entire thing. So I think there's real positives that have come out of that. The other thing I'd say, we've found, and we are doing, I think, a better job on the communication side during the COVID. You can't come to a person's home in advance of that move. So you're really having to open up those lines of communication, which has been, I think, probably one of the worst things we've done as an industry. And we're getting better because of COVID.
Yeah, can I add too?
Who would have thought, by the way? Yes, please.
Yeah, to Chuck's point, which is a great point on the virtual survey. The one thing though, from the customer side, is making sure that in a virtual survey, if you are, showing the mover something via video, that you're getting around to all the locations, in your house, up in the attic, out to the garage, and all those things, so that they have a really good idea of just, where everything is, what do you have that might be a challenge, right? So, if there's a negative feedback to that, it's probably that sometimes maybe that doesn't always happen. And so you got to take it on yourself to make sure that you give a real good visual of exactly what is in the house and what's going to get moved.
For sure. And,
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw this up there. This is a question from Monica. And I think, Monica, I may need you to elaborate just a bit. So here we go with Monica's shout out. Monica, are there any items that movers will not take? Like, can I contact the embassy of our future country? Like, what do you understand what she means by that?
Yeah, I think so. I can go for it. There is a tool that may be able to help you. It's on our website, www.iamovers with an S at the end .org, and we have what are called country guides, and it talks about all of the entry requirements into countries around the world. I think we've got 150 or 160 countries included in that guide. So if there are restrictions on firearms, if there are restrictions on alcohol, those kinds of things, those are all included in those country guides if you hope to, if you want to access them. But your transportation service provider, your mover, should be able to answer those questions for you. So there are some items, as you do an international relocation, that you're very likely not going to be able to take. So, no, but they would be the expert on that.
And just in general, usually anything that's flammable, like your aerosol cans, your liquids, batteries, sometimes light bulbs, all of those things are generally not moved as well, regardless of whether it's an OCONUS or CONUS move. So you'll always see that once the movers are done, once your crews are done and you go through your home, you'll find in your closet there's a shelf with batteries on it and your candles are left with it. And you'll find underneath your sink your Clorox bleach and your Lysol spray cans and things are going to be left there as well. So generally, if it's liquid, flammable, will melt, or hazardous in some condition, it will not move.
And I think the movers will encourage you not to take things like what you're talking about that may cause damage to other things in the shipment. That's really, you think a candle, what's the big deal? Well, the candle, as you're in the back of a moving truck in the middle of summer, it may be 100 plus degrees in the back of there. You don't want to see melted candles all over your stuff. So yeah, there are some things that may not make a lot of sense to you, but it's just a way to help avoid you having to fight on the other side about damages.
Yeah, to give you a good real-time example of that, we had a move where we had a jar of coconut oil, like Sam's Club size coconut oil, that got packed and was moved. The lid was not secured on it. Obviously, we all know coconut oil will melt when it gets heated. So this was all packed into a box, and our love seat was stood upright on its end, and the box was sat on top of the end of the love seat. So when our stuff got delivered and they pulled out this box soaking with coconut oil, then they pulled off our love seat, sat it on the driveway, and all of the coconut oil came pouring out of our love seat. And we had about a dozen other boxes that had some oil stains on it as well. So when they say like these things should not be packed, they should not be moved, don't try to hide them into anything because it's just not worth the hassle of trying to go through the claim for a $7 bottle of coconut oil or whatever it may be.
Let Megan be that cautionary tale. I mean, I've had my fair share fights with candles and trying to get that mess out of stuff, just in general, not even during a move. Like, yeah, not good. But I mean, like Megan said it all. Just let that be a cautionary tale, because I didn't have to go through all that. So kudos.
You know what? One of the things that keeps coming up too is are things like lithium batteries and e-bikes and stuff like that. And so, you know, that's something that we struggle with. And it's not really even your mover a lot of times. They're going to move that shipment if it's going internationally, you know, on a steamship line. And then there are rules that the steamship lines have as well. So we're in the middle of working with a group to try and help resolve that and kind of have a common understanding amongst all the steamship lines. But the requirements within those steamship lines are also a little different. So that's something that, you know, comes up every once in a while. Yeah.
And air freight shipments, it's just totally prohibited. I mean, you see that when you go take your flight, a commercial flight, they're asking you if you have any lithium batteries associated with it, the e-cigarettes and all of those kinds of things. It's because, you know, under pressure, some of those things have exploded in the past, and we don't want to see some kind of air disaster happen because there were lithium batteries in some items that you wanted to pack. So, yeah, it is just a precautionary tale. There's all kinds of things that you probably shouldn't be moving in either your air or your ocean shipment, for sure.
For sure. And I'm just really, you guys, we're getting a lot of comments and questions, and I'm loving this engagement. Keep asking the questions, people. If we don't get it to right now, we'll get to it at the end for sure. So Destin had a question. Shout out, Destin. If I did a virtual tour, right, what's the security of that tour? I'm hesitant to video our home layout for safety reasons.
Completely understand that. So it depends on the particular tool that you use. And I would, you know, I don't want to say yes or no either way. I think in the COVID environment, it made so much sense. Now, as hopefully we start to see the end in sight here, you know, you're going to be able to make that decision on your own. If you don't have a comfort level with having the video done, then for sure, say you want to have someone come into the home. It is up to you to decide whether or not you want to use this tool. You have complete control over that. That cannot be forced on you. But we have privacy requirements, we have security requirements all across the DoD in all of the tenders of service and requirements that we have to be a transportation service provider. So that cannot be shared at all. So just understand that, and then talk to your transportation service provider about what they say internally as to how they will hold the security of that. They should be destroying those after your move.
Good question, Destin. That's a really good question. And I mean, wow, they just keep coming in. Okay. I promise you we're going to get to you guys. We're going to move on to this next question just in case one of them actually answers yours. Okay. Let's go ahead and look forward, as in to the future, not actually looking forward, to the peak PCS season, which is right around the corner. Peak PCS season. We PCS all the time. That's why PCS grades exists. But peak PCS season is a higher volume, right? So what are some of the expectations that military families should have this peak PCS season?
Go ahead.
Loaded question.
I'll throw it to my expert.
Yeah, again, kind of like your last question, you know, we could go in a lot of different directions here. I think, you know, we're hearing from the services that there's not specifically pent up demand, but that it'll be a normal kind of sized moving season. We are seeing a little bit, stats that Transcom just showed us yesterday actually shows in the first 15 weeks of this year, we're about 10,000 shipments over what we were last year. So maybe there are people moving a little bit earlier. And yes, I know COVID shut some of that down, but that was later, you know, that was into March or later March or early April, those kind of things. So, so it looks like there's a little bit of people maybe getting ahead of the peak season curve, which is, again, as we talked demand smoothing before, always good. You know, we are seeing West Coast port problems. So that's something that's COVID has caused and continues to go on. It's been going on for quite a while. That shipments going through West Coast ports in either direction are being slowed down. So I think people need to be aware of that if they're heading into the Pacific or coming back from the Pacific. It's just been a mismatch of where freight is and where containers are available and things like that. And then just a push once COVID stopped for a little while, and then a push to shelve our stocks everywhere in the country, all kinds of big box stores and all that kind of stuff. That all competes with the capacity that you have as a military household goods shipment to get into and out of a port and onto a ship. So we're seeing some of those kind of things. What else, Chuck? What am I missing on?
Well, the one thing that I will say, and probably doesn't necessarily affect, though it may be secondary, tertiary effects on military families, but it's something that our industry is going to have to deal with. There are very few movers that just do DoD moving. I mean, maybe a few. Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where we are in crazy places in Texas. But many are around larger areas that have commercial moving as well involved. And what we are seeing, DoD says there's not a backlog, but there sure is a backlog in what we call the national account arena, which is corporations that are moving their employees, or what we call the COD arena. That's the individual shipper that wants to move, on their own dime. And so we're going to see a fight for capacity that will take place, we believe, this summer. So you may have an uphill battle, maybe, with getting the exact date you're looking for, because we are being pulled in a lot of different directions in our industry. So the thing I would say to the folks that are listening in, be sure to get your dates in as early as possible. As soon as you get your orders, mosey on down to the local transportation office, or get online with the Defense Personal Property System, and let's get this thing moving. Because the earlier we get those, what we would call shipment awards, into our queue, then the more planning we can do to be able to service all of the needs of the military families as best we can. So
I have a quick follow-up on that. So two things. Sure. One from me and one from our girl Dustin here. So from me on that side, the uphill battle, that importance of setting up your move the moment you have those hard copy of your orders. Amen. That's important.
And it's just not me harping on setting up your move anymore. As soon as you get your orders, you've now heard it from the industry folks as well about how important it is to get your move set up as soon as possible, because it's got to filter out to the moving companies, and it's got to be filtered into their schedule and their systems as well. So as soon as you have those orders, you get on DPS, you set up your move. And a reminder, you do not need a gaining address for setting up your move. You can simply put in your the city, the state, the installation that you are going to in order to set up your move. You can update your address at a later time when you have it. So don't be holding your orders, waiting to figure out your lease or where you're buying a home at to do it. Set up your move, update your address later.
Boom. Yep. I mean, boom. Dustin actually wanted to know, is any of this impacting the vehicle shipments overseas?
Yes, 100%. Particularly, I would say particularly if you are looking at a move that's going to somewhere in Asia, Japan, Korea, etc., because those are utilizing most West Coast ports, typically LA, Long Beach, San Francisco. Right now, the trade magazines in our industry show pictures of what's going on at these ports, and it looks like chaos. 30, 40 shipments sitting out in the water, I'm not shipments, ships sitting out in the water waiting to get a berth in at the port. Then when they get into the port, trying to get them out of the different terminals is difficult. And just one thing, it's kind of minutia, but it adds to all of this, is the fact that a while ago, it used to be you have these containers, you've seen those giant steamship containers, and they have a chassis that has to be added, that they have to sit on to roll out of the port for onward movement. The steamship lines used to own those. They divested themselves of that. And so there are groups that own these chassis. So you've got to marry up the container with the chassis, get a driver in to be able to pull those away. And this has become a really difficult situation, particularly in the LA Long Beach port, which is basically the largest port in the United States. So there are so many issues, and those vehicles, to get to Destin's point, are getting stuck at the port too. And LA Long Beach, which is kind of a dual port system, is one of the most affected. And we have seen significant delays in throughput on vehicles coming through that port in particular.
And so, I'll follow up too, because it's not just at the port too, right? So then we're having trucking problems, trucking capabilities and capacity, all-time highs, the cost of trucking kind of incredible highs, and then rail as well. So what used to be, you can get something on a rail car in a couple of days and move it across the country in 7 to 10 days, where it's taken sometimes a week or more to get something onto the rail. And then we've heard three weeks up to 7 weeks. Sometimes we've heard people with containers lost in Chicago for 60 days off a rail. So rail is congested, trucking is congested, the port is congested. There are labor problems associated with all of that as well, not only for your mover, which maybe we can talk about in a minute, but at the ports as well. Sometimes they're having some labor concerns.
So really quick to follow up. So we all know about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago now, the Suez Canal was a hot topic of discussion. Yep. So can you guys just you're muted, MJ, we can't hear you. But anyway, can you just clear up for us a little, I guess some education for us. So if I'm PCSing from Washington State going to Spain, is my stuff being put on a boat in Washington State and going the long way around the world, or is it going to be trucked across the states, or is every shipment going through the Suez Canal, or only certain ones?
Very few DoD shipments access through the canal. Most of them will be entering into Europe and then being railed or trucked to a final destination. A lot of rail going in, or a lot of shipments going in through either Rotterdam, Bremerhaven, or Antwerp. Those are big ports of entry into Europe on DoD shipments. Things that are going down to Italy and or into the Med somewhere, many a times they enter that way and then are railed on a rail car down for then to a central point where they're offloaded there. We've got to get those containers onward movement, and then they're typically trucked to that last point where they would come to a destination agent to be able to handle the final delivery. So very little DoD traffic moves through the Suez. The problem was the domino effect. So we back up the Suez for a couple of weeks, then you start to see ships that would have gone that direction decide to use another entry point, another I can't even think of what I'm talking about. Another port, and they use that port, and then more trucking rail is utilized at that point. But other than maybe Bahrain, if you're headed to Bahrain, something like that, then the Suez might be used. But it's a very small amount. But it's that domino effect that continues to back things up at other ports that wouldn't normally be utilized for those kinds of shipment. Now you got another ship sitting there waiting at that port, waiting to get discharged.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned Bahrain, because the webinar before last, we had a Navy spouse who recently did a PCS over to Bahrain, and kind of this impacted her stuff as well. And she just kind of talked about the Oconus experience, which is a lot different than moving state to state, and you know what I mean.
No doubt.
Shout out to all of you. I mean, these, I'm telling you, the questions that are coming in, they're going to give you a run for your money, guys. It is so fun. But I think Megan's next up.
Yeah, so switching gears a little bit from military contracted shipments to many folks will choose to do a PPM each year and move themselves. We know there's a lot of issues out there in regards to legit companies versus rogue companies. So for someone that wants to do a PPM, what are some red flags that they could see in those rogue companies? And what are some tips that could help them find a reputable service to use when choosing to do a PPM?
Sure. You bottom line is you're going to have to do your due diligence. There are tools that you can use to do basically a background check on companies. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is an arm of the Department of Transportation, and they license all household good movers that are doing interstate moving, state to state moving. So that might be one of the first resources. You can just ensure that you go on to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administrations. They have a system called the SAFER system, and it outlines for people, use the name of the company, and it will pull up their profile. Are they licensed? Are they insured? Etc. So that may be one of the first steps that you take. There are a couple of different trade associations. We have a publicly available directory that people can use to find out if they're a member of a trade association and whether or not we have a validation program that shows whether or not they have the proper licenses and that they are who they say they are, etc. So there are tools that you can use rather than just going, because anybody can set up a website. Don't just say, oh, they gave me great rates. They had a website. Well, that means literally nothing. And they can fake any kind of credentials on their website. So I just encourage you to do your due diligence. You can look at the Better Business Bureau to be able to get a rating on that organization. And again, IAM can be a resource for you. You can ask about a company. You can go on our website. You can send us an email. We can provide that kind of information to you and say, is this a reputable company? And we can definitely give you a thumbs up if they are. And if they're questionable, we can also let you know about that. Doesn't mean because they're not a member of IAM that they're not a decent company, but there are lots of red flags that may show they are. I don't even call them movers. I don't even call them rogues. I call them criminals. There's a lot of criminals out there that are looking to take advantage of people. And it's a shame that they would take advantage of a military family.
No joke. And just to kind of piggyback off of Chuck, I just wanted to go ahead and throw out there an additional way to research our movers. You can come to PCS grades because military families like yours across the country have utilized movers and have left feedback on those moving companies. So if you head over, I'm just the type of person where, like an industry, like association, like that is the unbiased, we're going to hold our people accountable because that reflects on the industry as a whole. Same thing with PCS grades. Like I'm going to trust what Megan says because Megan lives my life. So if she used a moving company and had a pretty crappy situation happen, or maybe had a great situation happen, I want to know about it so that my move can be as successful as possible. And I get that heads up before I even execute, especially for doing PPMs, right?
So I don't know if you were going to say the same thing I was going to say. So go ahead, Dan.
I would just say that the one thing that I would also add to this when you're trying to protect yourself is because people come to us even on the DoD side sometimes and say, hey, is this company one of your members? And can you tell us what's going on? We had an individual trying to do a personally procured move and now they can't get their stuff. They were asked for a deposit and they already spent money on it, all those kind of things. But the one thing that happens a lot of time on some of these criminals, rogue movers, is they really try and mirror the name of a legitimate company really closely. Obviously, it can't be exactly the same, but it can be confusing when you look at it because there's so many different types of names out there, with kind of key buzzwords. So that's another thing that, you might not actually be looking at the company you thought you were looking at, and their websites are pretty good at that as well. And Chuck can probably speak better to if he should ever pay for a deposit on a move or not. I think that's...
No, I would say that very, very, very few reputable movers ask for a deposit. They're not looking for you to give them up front before they perform any services. What you will find is there are companies, and they may be even licensed by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, but they're what are called brokers. And they're not going to perform your move. They're just kind of a middleman. And they will take that deposit, they'll put that in their pockets, and then they'll find you another mover that will actually be doing the move. And that mover may not be reputable because all they're worried about is finding the lowest possible cost. And they farm it out to this other company. So who you thought you were dealing with at the beginning may not be the company that you're dealing with in the end. I mean, they may not even be associated with each other in any way. And if I could,
would you say? No, I was just like, is that specific to PPMs? Like that wouldn't happen if a military move was organized.
No. There are companies that, because again, the supply chain and the processes, I may be a mover that's a transportation service provider headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, but the move may be happening in Yuma, Arizona. Okay. I have organizations, and that's really what our organization helps them do, is find reputable partners that they can work with in conjunction. That's different than a broker and a rogue situation. Very, very, very different. Last thing, I'm gonna do a little commercial for IAM, and it's that we're building right now a website that is what we're going to term a consumer-facing website. And it is going to be called IAM, I am trusted. And it's going to even take the requirements to be it's a designation to be an IAM trusted mover. It's going to be what we normally do now on steroids. And it's going to be, you're going to have to meet a ton of different requirements to be on this website, and then to have the consumers, whether they be PPMs, whether they be, we have in the commercial realm, corporations that give a lump sum to their employees and say, okay, here's $5,000, get to the other end and we'll see you then. And so they're kind of left out, just like in a PPM, you're left out in the ether trying to figure out how do I do this? What's the best methodology? And so we're going to be building this site. We've talked with the PCS grades folks, and we're looking to do some kind of partnership potentially on this, so that there is a confidence, that there's a reassurance that going to a trusted site to be able to find someone who's reputable to deal with. And then if there are problems, we're going to provide a dispute resolution process as well, where we're going to be able to help that individual who's decided to utilize this website. So more to follow on that. Hopefully we'll come back together and talk about it when it's stood up. But anyway.
Awesome. So just for the record, I'm seeing these amazing questions, and I just want to say these spouses, they're not playing around. Like, they are giving you the verbiage that is just bam. So I'm just going to give you an example of two spouses that piggybacked off of one another. So the first one, Danielle, shout out Danielle. I'm sorry if it's covering our peep spaces. So speaking to background checks, do families have the right to background check the background checks of workers being assigned to work their move? We had a military police have to escort our packers off the premises due to one of them not passing the check to get on post. And in addition to that, to piggyback off of that, Mary said, how do we even confirm that COVID health checks have been performed, and that, the packers aren't day laborers, or, that have been trained properly? Like, where's the accountability, I guess, factor in that?
Well,
how do we know?
Yeah, well, the accountability is on the transportation service provider. Number one, they will lose their licensure. They'll lose their ability to do work with the DoD if they are providing workers that have not been background checked, that have outstanding warrants or any of those types of things, and or not passed the COVID protocol. So during COVID, there was a set of requirements that was put together by DoD. You have to check your employees every day. Again, you can't get in the veins and do blood tests, but you do the temperature checks every day. You ensure that when they leave that office in the morning, they have been checked at least to the best that can be done by that organization. You are to be receiving a health protocol sheet as they walk to the door, identifying who that crew is and that they have been checked that day and that they meet the requirements set forth by DoD. If they don't have that paper, I wouldn't be letting them in the house, period. And I'd be calling back to my transportation office and saying they don't have the proper paperwork with them. It's not worth risking your life over. So we have requirements that we have to meet. We also have requirements to do background checks. Now, I'm going to bottom line you here. There are limitations legally as to what we can do. For privacy rules, we can do background checks, and those background checks in most states can only go back as far as 7 years. And so if they've done something, they've had a clear record for 7 years and they had something happen before that, that's probably not something legally that a moving company is able to do. But let me tell you, if they're cutting corners and they're not doing this kind of thing, then they don't deserve to be in the program. And I will tell you, everybody that's in the program would be the first to say they got to go. So I feel pretty comfortable with this. Now, here's what at sometimes happens, particularly in the peak season. We have drivers that are what we call owner operators. They may work for United Van Lines or North American Van Lines or one of the big guys, but they basically are a contractor and they own their own truck. They have the colors and logos of that organization, but they're kind of on their own. And they may try to go to a local agency to pick up help as they go to pick up or deliver your shipment. But sometimes it's very tight. And so they may be able to get some kind of labor that they found that may or may not have been background checks. They have the responsibility to ensure they're working with individuals, but there are times when things slip through the cracks, and I think it's mostly in that environment.
I just want to add in there really quick. So the background checks piece was a tender of service regulation change that took place for the 2020 peak season. So it went into effect May 15th, 2020. I asked this question to Transcom previously, as a spouse, as a family member, how can I know if somebody is background checked? If somebody seems shady and I'm not sure, but I know this regulation is there, what can I do? And the advice given from them was that if you are concerned about somebody in your home, you can always reach out to your transportation service provider, your move coordinator, or you could reach out to your local transportation office and you can ask them about a specific person. They can go through their channels to verify if that crew member in your home is background checked or not. Also, the DoD Transcom is really empowering families and spouses for who is in their home. So if you have somebody that shows up as part of the crew and you don't feel comfortable with them, either, it might be their behavior or, it might be concerns over the health protocols, like they're sneezing everywhere, they're coughing everywhere, you're not comfortable with it. You are more empowered now to say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want you in my home doing the work. You call your move coordinator, you let them know, and they should be finding a replacement for that person. So if you've got concerns about it, definitely reach out to your move coordinator and reach out to your local transportation office and let them work their channels to help you rectify that situation.
Yep, I'd agree.
Word.
And I'd agree. One of the staff members that's on site at your residence is probably designated as a crew chief. Or at least they should. And they should be the one that's introducing themselves and the crew to you as they come into your home. I would indicate if you can't get a hold of because sometimes it's tough to get a hold of a quality assurance individual with the base, or get a hold of your move coordinator at that exact second. I'd be going to that crew chief and look, I'm not comfortable with this individual. I'd ask you to have them sit in the truck or outside the home until we can clear this up. So I'd encourage that as well.
Okay. And before I move on to the next question, just let me tell you, these people are on fire. But Mary had a question. Okay, if we stop a move, what happens? Like, what does that do to our timeline? Does that mean that our timeline completely changes and that we're on the back end now?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible if we stop the move. Now, if she means that during the day that something's going on with the move, either packing or loading, if you stop that move, then yeah, there may be some delays associated with that. I think that, in most cases, you're going to see a transportation service provider, the agent that's servicing the shipment, try to replace a crew member on your behalf, because it's better for them to continue and get the problem rectified rather than delaying. Again, we have some flexibility in January and February. And when you get into the end of June, there's not a whole lot of flexibility. We've got everything booked up day after day after day. To be able to say, well, we'll just move you to the next day, sometimes is very difficult. So they want to take whatever mitigation steps they can to be able to ensure that the service comes off the appropriate way.
Yeah.
And I just want you guys to know, Megan went ahead and put in the comments section that, this is a hot topic, people, and we need to have these questions answered. And I want you to know that every single one of your questions are going to be answered directly after this if we don't get to them now, because Megan is always here. She's going to be answering. And then Chuck and Dan are both, like they said, we're going to be teaming up, so they can't get rid of us now. And and they're going to be talking to us, and they're going to help us get you those answers. Mm-hmm. As soon as we get off here, we're going to just coordinate a communication plan, and we're going to get you those answers stat. Yeah. So Megan, go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay. Big hot topic of conversation now is about the 7-day spread window, pickup window spread. So what is the moving industry's position on this rule change? And if you could briefly describe, also what that 7-day window spread is. And then how do you guys see it being implemented? And do you have concerns on what this spread window can do this upcoming peak season?
Yeah. Yes, no, yes, and yes. So
perfect. Hope you all got that.
The 7-day spread, here's my understanding. So it's a hot topic everywhere, right? It's a hot topic on the industry side. It's a hot topic with industry to Transcom and Transcom back, and obviously on the customer side as well. So the concern is that there's going to be different definitions depending on where you go. That's the concern, right? That we all got to get together and have the same idea about what the 7-day spread means. And from the industry side, the date that shows up in DPS as your pickup date is the first date of the 7-day spread. And then after that, so if the first date that shows up in DPS that says the member wants picked up on the 1st of June, then from the 1st to the 7th of June, the industry, per what we're getting from Transcom and the GIPSOs, the industry has from that 1st to the 7th to organize your pickup, to pick up your shipment. Now, if the pickup ends up being on the 1st, then prior to that, obviously are pack days, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be outside the spread, but everything else, if it's the last day, if it's the 7th of June on a 1 June spread, then your pickup date is going to precede those days. So everything that from a pickup perspective is within that 7-day window. And, industry folks, I think, are trying to sort through exactly how they're going to handle that, what it means for them 3 months out, what it means for them, 10 days out, it's going to be different, right? Kind of sorting through that. So you're going to typically a transportation service provider mover is going to have to go to their local agent. You're going to have to say, hey, I got this move on 1 June. Do you have time between the 1st and the 7th for pickup, for packing and pickup on that? And then back then to the member to say, okay, we have this 7-day spread window. It says 1 June, we can do it on 3 June. So we'll pack you on the first and the second, we'll pick you up on the third, and that's our plan. And, then there's potentially some opportunity there for some pushback on the customer side. But as Chuck said, when we start getting into that really tight window, it's going to be less and less flexibility for somebody to go back. I've gone to the agent. They said, yes, I can do it on the third. I've come back to the customer, and the customer says, hey, can we do the fifth? Well, now everything's being kind of scrunched in there together, and the agent's getting less and less flexibility to handle your move. So I think the 7-day spread is something that can be useful. I think it's probably being implemented in a way that's different than most industry folks are used to it being implemented, a spread. So that was something that took some by surprise, that they weren't really sure exactly what was being kind of pushed out there from the rules perspective on that side. But I think there are some positives that, it could allow you some additional capacity, because people have an opportunity now to work within that 7-day window to try and fit your shipment in. And I think then the concern is, how well does a self-counseled customer know about the 7-day spread? And frankly, how well will all the counselors that are actually doing counseling, will their understanding of it be the exact same, from person to person to person, so that the industry has a consistent message on what's happening on that, and what the members' expectations are? Because frankly, it all comes back to the member, right? Regardless of the rule, in the industry side, you could be right. You could say, hey, I have the authority to use the spread date and move you within that 7-day window, and this is where I'm going to choose to do it. But if the customer is not happy right at the beginning, it's certainly not going to help the TSP and the mover from a customer satisfaction perspective to take on that move. So those are my
really quick for clarification purposes. So that 7-day window is just that window of time to come and pick it up, not including the whole pack up stuff, right? They are required. It's not that they have 7 days to schedule the move. It's that they have 7 days to pick up your household goods, correct?
To schedule the pickup date.
The pickup
That's
date.
right.
So when we set up our move in DPS, we are inputting our requested pickup date. That requested pickup date generates that 7-day window spread. So when our shipment gets assigned to a TSP, that TSP is supposed to contact us within 3 days of being assigned our shipment, to then negotiate and to lock in and confirm that pickup date. So in advance what that confirmed pickup date is. I believe now if it's 10 days or less until your shipment, the TSP has 1 day to contact you to confirm that date, if you're one of those folks with short notice orders type of deal. But we should all know in advance, within 3 days of our shipment being assigned, what our confirmed pickup date is based off of when they're supposed to contact us. So it's not your house is packed up and you're not sitting in your home for a week waiting for them to show up with a truck type kind of deal. In advance what that confirmed pickup date is, and that window is generated off of what you put into DPS as your requested pickup date. And that requested pickup date is day 1 of that spread.
Yeah, so this is where the questions come in, because Dan and I had about a 10 or 15 minute discussion on this between the two of us before we got on to today's show. And the big deal was DPS is the system that we're utilizing for all of this, but they did not make any upgrades to DPS based on this 7-day spread. So it's going to look like it's always looked. And so the question was, this start date of this spread, it will be in the preferred pickup date window. But when the experience thus far on shipments, starts effective May 15th, but we booked some shipments now that are picking up May 15th and beyond. And when the transportation service provider calls the member or the spouse, they say, well, that date was not my preferred date. It was just in the window. So I have concerns that we all get on the same page as what is the date that is the start of this spread of 7 days? Because if the preferred date is in DPS as 1 June, we're not looking other than packing, we're not looking for pickups that the member it was hoping to get before that June 1st. It's not the middle of the spread, it's the start of the spread. So we are required to pick up that shipment sometime between the first date, that what we think is the preferred date, and 7 days hence. And we will negotiate with you on what is the date that we are available and that you are available during that 7-day spread. So we all need to be on the same page and understand what are the triggers here. That's the most, and what gets into DPS is a critical piece.
And other than, you got to think too, as well as Saturday and Sunday, right? Unless the member and the movers are in agreement that Saturday and Sunday aren't days that count in that either. So, but the pack dates should generally immediately precede your pickup date. So that's something that, right? So if you get 1 June, then 31 May, 30 May should be your pack dates if it's a 2-day pack, right? That's what you should expect.
Do you know what I would love? I'm just
No.
going to throw it out there because I like to break it down Barney style, meaning I need it broken down Barney style for me. So I would love to have like a chart that's set, like an if-then chart.
Yeah.
So if you do this on this date, expect this on this date, because we got people who are setting there, I need to move out by this date, who, again, because not everybody's on the same page. If everybody had access to a chart that said if then, boom, boom, boom.
I got you.
I'm thinking, so I think we should just like make a pact to like create this.
Nope,
Well,
I've got one, and we can.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I've got one. The one given from Transcom in their notice explaining the 7-day window spread, and we'll get that posted in the comments below, so that way all of you can see exactly how it is given from Transcom, the clarity of it, and the description of all of that stuff for you to understand.
So just real quick, thank you for that, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. There is an advisory that has gone out with with a few examples, and if this happens, then this is to happen. So that MJ, great thought, and Megan, thanks for posting that. But what we've gotten is a lot of why. Why did we move to this 7-day spread? And my thought and my feeling is, from the feedback we've gotten, is that there is a lot of negotiation that went on between military members and TSPs, and changing of dates, and some of it not with great timing associated with it. So why not, rather than after the fact, why not try to deal with this all before the fact and get a common understanding of when we're coming to pick you up at the very beginning, so you can do your planning. So let's start out with a 7-day window of dates for the pickup, and then we can discuss with that, rather than I put this one date in and my expectation is it's got to be that date. Well, as Dan talked about, putting that 10 pounds of what in that 5-pound bag, then it's really difficult to try to shift things and focus in on one date. So let's find out a window that we can really negotiate with beforehand.
And can I throw in one real quick thing out for this crowd, especially one of the service DoD service reps mentioned on one of the last calls, which is a great comment, and it's easy to say, harder to do. But he said, our counselors need to be counseling the individuals that they can't set up their I must be out date first and then seek transportation. They have to seek their transportation first, right? When can I move? And then send out the date that they're getting out of housing or getting out of their apartment, and those kind of things, right? That it's kind of been backwards in the past, and especially now with this kind of window where if you have to be out by a certain time, well, you better have had your transportation scheduled first and then make all those, I must be out of, or I must be cleared from after that point.
You're muted. Come back to us.
Every time. It would not be a Wednesday if it didn't happen, for the record. Twice now. Thanks. Get out, Murphy. Okay, so this has been fantastic. Our audience is on fire. We all definitely have our work cut out for us in answering some of these questions that we weren't able to get to. We've got you, people. We're not leaving you hanging. Before we go, we're going to do the wheel of names.
Uh-oh.
And once we close out, you guys stay on screen, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I have been. I am making sure that you don't get to see inside of my entire ADD brain. I have closed some tabs just for you. So let me just go ahead and share this. Okay, we have got a lot of names. Look at this wheel. Last week, let me tell you, last week was our 50th episode, guys, and we broke the wheel. Yeah, it happened. We totally broke this website because we had almost 300 names in there.
Wow.
So, here we go. I'm going to click the wheel, and these are both for This Too Shall PCS necklaces from Hope Design. Let's see what we got. Drum roll for our.
I'm just saying, my wife loves necklaces. I'm just saying.
Does she? Does she know? Yes, am I.
Guess my
Okay,
name's
Stacy. Stacy
All right, Stacy.
Vance. Congratulations. Go ahead and hit up the PCS Grades Facebook page with your email address so that we can get in touch with you to send this out to you. All right. So congrats, Stacy Vance. Next up, same one, the This Too Shall PCS necklace. And perhaps we can send your wife one as well.
Oh, no, I'm not begging here.
Monica Barfield. Congratulations, Monica. Woo! We do have your info, and we will be getting with you. We'll go ahead and send that to you and let you know when it's sent off. Because Monica is one of our fans. She watches every week, and we love her for it. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I don't break you or the internet. All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. You are awesome. We're going to have to do this again because I think this is going to be that ongoing conversation with those updates and changes, and you helping us navigate that and helping our audience navigate that is absolutely critical. Yes, you went down into the weeds, but that is never a bad thing with this audience. We need to understand why things are happening when they're happening.
We're here. We're available to you anytime you want to have us back. That communication arm that we're doing with the MRAP, love that acronym, that we're doing, the MRAP is part of this whole idea of the more communication that we do, the better the understanding becomes, the better the process will be. So we're here.
Absolutely. So thank you, gentlemen. We're going to put their information too if you ever want to get in contact. Where every link that we talked about, every resource that they have, all of those links are going to be included here in the comments here shortly. And or our wonderful content editor, Lizanne Lightfoot over at PCS Grades, she transcribes each and every one of these. So every link in there is also going to be in our blog on pcsgrades.com. But so that will bring the end of our show. Until next time, Megan.
This too shall PCS.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.